Picture a Tuesday. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely dismantle everything you think you know about how human beings are naturally supposed to spend their time. Seriously, throw out the rule book. Let's just dive right in.
Think about your typical Tuesday routine. You know the one. You wake up, you immediately grab your phone. You're rushing out the door, stressed out, and you sit at a desk. You scroll, you eat something super fast, usually while staring at, you guessed it, another screen for hours on end. Then you come home, absolutely drained, and watch something until your eyes finally close. That's your day, right? And it's probably been your day for years.
But here's the crazy catch. That hyper-stressed, totally draining version of a day, the one you just instantly recognized, that has only existed for roughly 0.01% of human history.
Which brings us to the other 99.99%. I know, it's a massive, shocking realization. And honestly, it's exactly how researchers felt when they actually started studying this. Because what they found shatters almost every single assumption we have about what we are naturally wired to do with our time. The truth is way stranger, a lot slower, and just incredibly surprising.
So to really understand this, we've got to start by debunking what I like to call the survival myth. You probably carry this assumption around without even realizing it. I mean, evolution class taught us to imagine ancient life as this non-stop, brutal frenzy, right? Just constantly fleeing from giant, terrifying mammoths, scavenging in pure desperation, living a life so entirely consumed by just trying to survive that there was literally zero room for anything else.
Well, guess what? That image is completely wrong. And this brings us to actual, hard anthropological data. Back in 1966, an anthropologist named Marshall Solon spent years studying hunter-gatherer societies. He ended up publishing an essay that turned the entire field completely upside down. He actually called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society, not because they had immense material wealth, obviously, but because they had something much, much rarer. They had time. Solons found that the average hunter-gatherer truly worked, and by worked I mean actively acquiring food, somewhere between 3 and 5 hours per day. Yeah, you heard that right. Not 10 hours, not your standard 8-hour grind, just 3 to 5 hours.
So what on earth do they do with the rest of the day? Well, your ancestors, the exact people whose brains and bodies you are currently running on, were built for long stretches of doing, well, very little by modern standards. Researchers studying the Hadza people of Tanzania found that mornings started incredibly slowly. No blaring alarm clocks, no rushing around. You just woke up with the dawn, gathered near the warmth of a fire, talked, and watched the morning light change while the kids played. Nobody had anywhere to be.
Now, when it was time to find food, it definitely wasn't mindless labor. Anthropologist David Kaplan noted the extraordinary cognitive load of foraging. It was intense. While walking, you were processing dozens of variables simultaneously. We're talking seasonal plants, underground water sources, animal tracks, wind direction. You were observing, tracking, and gathering. It was basically like having a complex living map running in your mind. And you were doing all this highly socially, talking and reading the land together.
Then, after that morning work, which again might only take a couple of hours, came a phase that modern life has completely deleted: biphasic sleep. Jerome Siegel from UCLA actually embedded with the Hadza and found their sleep was naturally split. They had a shorter night's sleep and a longer, absolutely essential afternoon rest. Napping was just a given, everywhere. Their bodies followed the sun, not a ticking clock.
And hey, this connects directly to you right now. If you've ever felt that intense pull of the dreaded afternoon slump, and you fought it off with, say, a double espresso, you aren't fixing some productivity bug in your system. You are actively overriding your ancient biology. Your body is literally expecting that afternoon rest phase. Socializing was fundamentally different back then, too. Instead of sitting alone scrolling through a screen, enormous amounts of ancient time were spent simply sitting in close physical proximity, picking through hair and talking. In fact, anthropologist Robin Dunbar famously argued that human language actually evolved as a replacement for this physical grooming. It was a more efficient way to bond with a bunch of people all at once. So all that gossiping you feel guilty about at the water cooler, that was actually the real work of being human.
And at night, the whole vibe of the conversation transformed. Polly Weissner studied the Sand people of the Kalahari and recorded hundreds of hours of their talk. During the day, the chatting was practical. But at night, sitting around the campfire, 80% of the conversation shifted into stories, myths, and moral tales. Weissner calls this the origin of the social imagination, that vital space where we simulate other lives and worlds in our minds. And it all happened in the dark, lit by fire for hours on end.
Even during daylight downtime, tasks were completely unhurried.
Making arrows or stone knapping wasn't about hitting some rushed factory quota. It was calm, it was communal, and it was incredibly slow. You simply sat with someone, worked with your hands, and talked. So you might be wondering, where were the kids during all of this? Developmental psychologist Peter Gray points out that hunter-gatherer children learned almost entirely through unstructured play, observation, and imitation. There was zero formal instruction. Nobody was standing at a chalkboard lecturing a 6-year-old on how to track a zebra. The child watched, tried, failed, and the adults simply let them figure it out on their own.
Ancient humans also spent vast amounts of time doing what we would probably just call looking, sitting by a river, scanning the tree line, watching the sky change on the horizon. This wasn't wasted time. It was a continuous, low-level awareness, a crucial ancient survival skill. So honestly, the next time you find yourself staring blankly out a window for 20 minutes, do not feel guilty. That pull you feel, it isn't laziness. It is incredibly old.
All of this creates a massive difference in our minds today. York University researcher John Eastwood actually defines boredom as a uniquely modern mismatch. Boredom requires a mind that expects to be constantly entertained. Ancient humans? They just didn't experience this gap. They were already completely immersed in a rich sensory and social world.
And finally, time was formally, intentionally set aside for ceremony. Across every studied group, things like rituals, music, and body painting were universal. For example, the Hadza perform a weekly nighttime ritual dance called apime. And this wasn't just optional weekend entertainment to blow off some steam. It was deeply woven into the very structure of what a week actually meant to them.
So let's zoom back out and look at your Tuesday again. The contrast is absolutely stark. We traded an ancient, present-tense, physically connected life for a modern, mediated existence. Now we wake to blaring alarms, we eat alone, we process symbolic text and numbers indoors on flat glass surfaces, and we rarely even touch the people around us.
Now look, none of this is a moral failing on your part. It is simply what the world became. But your body hasn't caught up. When you feel inexplicably exhausted, when you crave aimless conversation, or when you feel a tightness in your chest loosen simply by watching the light change out a window, well, that's just the oldest version of your nervous system coming briefly online. It's begging for the rest its ancestors literally built into their days.
Ancient humans did not spend their days surviving in a blur of desperation. They spent them being present, being together, and moving slowly in a world that gave their senses something real to track. The question isn't why that specific world is gone. The real question is, on your next Tuesday, how much of it can you bring back?